Next, I want to introduce Adam Connor, who you've heard about. He heads our organizational design strategy. Adam is a scholar on design and design process. He has a book called Discussing Design. I think he's signing it today or tomorrow. He's super awesome, so please welcome Adam. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. My name is Adam Connor. I do run organizational design for MadPow. The goal of our practice is to work with organizations to help them learn how to become more creative, collaborative, how to work better together to make use of their ideas and their talent. But I'm also a patient. I have 3 chronic conditions that require me to get treatment on an ongoing basis. I have to go into the hospital and get a few infusions that take up a day. And I've had these conditions, my most recent one I was diagnosed with about 2 years ago. And so for the past 2 years, I've had a monthly ritual of getting up in the morning, packing up a lunch, because hospital food sucks, going to the hospital, and hanging out with my 2 dear friends, Darlene and Cher. And Darlene and Cher run medical daycare at the hospital where I get my infusions. And we've become good friends. And one of the awesome things about that friendship is I get to, on a monthly basis, hear them bitch about everything they have to go through, about all the new crap that the hospital puts in front of them and requires them to use. And they know I'm a designer. They know I work in healthcare. So I think they take a little bit of joy in bitching to me about it. But I get to see these things, and I don't get to play with them as much as I would like. They don't let me really touch them. But I've seen a lot of systems come through. I've seen new devices, new process changes. And I'm always wondering why. I know a lot of the people that have actually worked on these things, that have produced this software, produced these products. And I can see Darlene's frustration when she's trying to use it. And I just wonder, like, why? These people I know, they're smart people. They're far smarter than I am. So why is stuff like this coming out? Why do Darlene and Cher have to use these things? Why does this stuff suck so much? And we can see this not just in healthcare, but we can see this all over the place, right? Windows 7, right? Quickster, yeah? The Fire Phone, right? All of these organizations have brilliant people working there. People who are smart, who are creative, talented, and yet they still put out stuff like this. And why is that? And the conclusion that I've come to is that talent and ideas are just, they're not enough. Having talent, having ideas does not ensure that you're going to have success. So if that's true, what does ensure that we have success? What do we have to do to really make sure that we can use that talent and use those ideas? And the more I've worked on this problem, the more this topic of culture comes up. And a lot of the conversations I have about culture, and I talk to people about what their organizational culture is, and I get things like, yeah, our dress policy is don't come to work naked. And we've got a fridge full of craft beer. And that's our culture. And I'm like, great, but that's not true. Those are reflections of certain aspects of your culture. But that's not all your culture is. Your culture is this shared set of beliefs that all of you have that guide you in determining how you're going to interact, what kinds of things you're going to do, what behaviors you're going to exhibit. And it's this culture that gets in our way when we want to use our talent and share our ideas and make things happen, right? Deming said, a bad system will be a good person every time, and we can look at our culture as a system. We can look at just about anything as a system. Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. No matter how much planning we put into our strategy, no matter how great our ideas are, if the way we work together if our behaviors and our beliefs, if they don't allow us to really do something with that, then no matter how much planning we go through, it's not going to work. I think that in order for us as an organization, as a community, as people, in order for us to be able to take advantage of the talent we have, of the genius that's in this room, we need to be part of organizations that have cultures that support and push our talent and push these ideas, right? We need to be able to flourish. And so how do we do that? How do we actually change organizations? What kinds of organizations have cultures that allow these talents and these ideas to work? We've found 5 core beliefs in the research that we've done. And the first is that everyone is part of the creative process. Designers are not this one pot of people that exist off in a room somewhere where they don't have cubicles because they don't believe in cubicles. Everything has to be open floor plan, right? And they're all wearing turtlenecks in black, right? They don't own creativity. They aren't the place where creativity happens. We all have to be a part of it. Everybody participates. Even though everybody participates, that doesn't mean that we go to the opposite end of the spectrum where everything is driven by consensus. And unless everybody agrees, nothing happens. Because when you get to that point, nothing will ever happen. Because you will never reach complete consensus. So collaboration does not negate the need for strong leadership, for clear vision. And so we need to find out who those leaders are, and we need to put them in positions where they actually can lead. Before we actually work together with our leaders, with all of the participants, to actually go about solving a problem, we first need to work together to understand it. Right? Something I've seen happen in organizations as they start to mature with design is they establish a research team. And research is awesome. Research is a core component to making all of this work. The problem with the dedicated research team is that you can take it too far. And you can have the researchers in their own silo, and they're the ones that are going out and talking to people and really have the best opportunity to develop empathy. And then they have to try to communicate all of that back. They have to try to get all of the stuff that they've observed and they've heard and put it into the heads of everybody else on the team. And that never goes as far as it would if those people had just participated in the research too. So we need to make sure that everybody is working as part of the research effort. Everybody is there to see what's really going on. And that learning is part of the process, right? As we go about creating things, as we make decisions, as we try something, we're going to learn more about what we're doing. We're going to learn more about the people we're doing something for. We're going to learn more about the systems that we're affecting. And we need to have a way to take that learning in and actually do something with it, actually change our actions because of what we learn. So how do we go about changing an organization's culture? First, we need to understand 3 systems. Any organization is a component of 3 systems. The first is the rational or the formal system. This is what we're all familiar with. It looks like your org chart, or it might look like a process map that you guys have developed, right? These are formal structure things. You're supposed to do A, B, and C, or that person over there reports to that person there. So anything they have to say is going to flow up through this chain. We have to understand what that system is. This is where most organizational change efforts take place, in these rational systems. But pretty much everybody in this room knows that these things are bullshit. Because as you spend any time in an organization, you start to figure out that, hey, maybe I can get something done better if I just jump this guy and go talk to them over there. Or we work best when we partner with that team. Or that process sucks, so I'm going to ignore it, and I'm just going to go straight over here. And this is the natural or the adaptive system that grows over time as people figure these things out. And we can't ignore this, because if you ignore it, you can't change it. You're going to try to change that rational structure, but that rational structure isn't always really what's causing people to act the way they're acting. And so these two are the most common. These are two are the most evident to us. The one we most often miss, though, is the open system. You can look at any organization as a piece of a larger collection. So you can look at things like a school and think about all the other organizations that exist within the community where that school resides. And how do those other organizations affect what the school does or doesn't do? What kinds of relationships are there between the school and those other organizations? Hospitals go through this as well. Hospitals and community involvement is huge, right? And it would be foolish of us to think that there isn't some interdependency there. So we have to understand these three systems, because any kind of change that we design needs to take these things into account. The next thing we need to know about is the manifestations of our culture. How do we actually go about seeing our culture? Where does this actually take shape, right? And there's lots of things that we have in our culture that reflect, or in our organizations that reflect our culture. We have things like the skills and knowledge that the people that work for our organization actually have. We have the tools and processes that we use, the structures that we set up, the way we talk to one another, right? We have the environments in which we work in, the policies, incentives, our values and mission statements. All of these things reflect our culture to some degree. But not only that, they also reinforce our culture. So things like structure and roles will affect and reinforce skills and knowledge and values and assumptions and the physical environment that we set up, right? And this goes around and around. Incentives reinforce the other aspects. And we get this weird network of reflection and reinforcement. And this is why changing culture is so damn hard. Because you can't just pick one thing and change it, because everything else is still there. Everything else is trying to push back on that one thing you changed and changed it back to what it used to be, because there was a coherent system before, right? And it worked. And it might have sucked, but things worked. And so you have to make sure that the changes that you plan for take into account this network. And the place that we've found, you have to start somewhere, the place that we've found that works best to start with are your values and assumptions. What is it you say as an organization that you value? What do you pride yourselves in? And then look at the behaviors that people are actually exhibiting and determine, do those line up? Most of the challenges we found, we can break down to a discrepancy between what you're saying, your espoused values, and your demonstrated beliefs. And from there, once we pinpoint those, we can start to look at all of these other aspects and figure out where best to work. We can use the design process. We have lots of amazing tools for creating change. And if we do this, it works somewhat like this. First, we need to go about understanding. We need to go through discovery. What the hell do we have? What are we working with? We need to envision a future. We need to see what kind of a culture, what kind of an organization do we want to be, right? And we have lots of tools for having these kinds of discussions, which can be a little awkward. We have things like the culture map, right? This is a tool just to discuss what kinds of beliefs do we have, and how are these beliefs manifesting within our organization. And we have things like journey maps. We can turn journey maps inward, and we can look at our processes, and we can look at what different people do along the way, and whether or not that's good or bad, whether it presents a challenge or an opportunity, right? And we have things like the COM-B model that help us understand behavior and how behavior is driven and influenced by capability, motivation, and opportunity. And we can map all of those things that I talked about earlier to these things. We can map skills and knowledge to capability, and processes and tools to opportunity, and values and assumptions to motivation. And we can start to see what we would need to do, what we would need to change in order to get people to act a certain way, to behave a certain way with one another. So we move on. We start to identify the opportunities and the challenges that we have. We start to generate ideas for what kinds of shifts can we make, looking at who we are in an organization. What kind of influence do we have? What changes can we make to start to get to this culture we want? And we select some of those, and then we try them. And we analyze the results, and then we iterate, and we change, and we adapt. Because as we start to try to make these changes, we learn more about our organization. Amy talked a lot about empathy. And empathy is an amazing, amazing thing. But I think too often we're looking at empathy as a way for us to understand our audience. We need to bring that internal. We see organizations and we see roles like design and business and development. And these groups tend to draw these walls between them. And we start to get a picture of how they think about each other. And it kind of looks like this. Everybody thinks that everybody else is out to get them. Everybody else is evil. But that's not true. Right? We're all trying to work on the same thing. Our intentions might be a little different, though, because of the organizations we come from. I might be part of a design organization. Somebody else might be part of the development organization. We're being examined through different kind of sets of metrics. We're being measured in different ways. But we're trying to get to the same thing. So we have to have an understanding of why our colleagues work the way they work, why they make the kinds of decisions that they do. We need to understand our influence, right? Far too often I get people that are like, oh, I'd love to change my culture, but I am not an executive, so I can do jack shit. No matter where you are, you have an opportunity to do something. So what I typically do with these teams or these people is I have them draw a quick organizational map. Show me all the people, show me the relationships. Then let's draw a line around who we have here with us in this conversation right now. Now, within that line, we have direct influence. Because all those people are here and they're saying they want to do something, we can change the relationships that those people have. We can look at how they interact and we can make changes. The arrows that cross that line, we have partial influence. By changing the way we act towards people who are just outside that boundary, we can start to get to change some of their actions back towards us. And then the people who exist far outside this, we have viral influence. If we're successful at making our relationships better, then by proximity, by observation, they will observe. And if they see the value, they will be interested in that value, and they will try to make changes themselves. So no matter where you are, you have some opportunities. The best thing that we've seen is to look for opportunities to build trust and ask questions. And if you do those two things, you'll start to see where your leverage is strongest. And then finally, we need to redefine productivity. Far too often, we measure productivity by lines of code written or numbers of features delivered or whatever that might look like. But we need to incorporate learning into productivity. How much have we actually learned about what we're doing, about who we're designing for, about the problem that we're trying to solve, right? Organizations often structure their work like this. They think about what they could do, what they should do, and then they try to figure out, okay, how are we going to do it? Some organizations do the opposite. They try to figure out something that they could do, and then they figure out a way to make it seem valuable to everybody else, right? These are solutions in search of problems. The problem isn't so much this putting the how before the what. The problem is actually the line in between. Because realistically, what we have is we have a loop. And no matter where we start, whether we start with the how or we start with the what, we can make this loop work. Because determining what we might do leads us to think more about how we might do it. And once we do that thing and we put it out into the world, we have an opportunity to learn. And that learning helps us think even more clearly about what we might do, which tells us better how we might do it. And this goes around and around and around. And we need to incorporate that into our definitions of productivity. And that's why I think that intentional culture change requires persistence, adaptation, and iteration. This is not going to happen in one big bang. We need to make little changes where we can. We need to learn from those changes and adapt to them. Intentional culture change is designed. Intentional culture change is organizational design. Thank you very much.